Yo, what's going on, everybody? You are watching Vikings Now by Chat Sports. My name is Patrick Siepman, and we actually got some big time news to discuss on today's show as we're going to be diving into some of the top Vikings free agent targets after the 2025 NFL trade deadline. There are some good names out there, and there's actually a marquee player that is visiting with the Vikings. We'll dive into that here in a second. But before we do so, if you guys could help us reach our next milestone of 66,000 subscribers, we are knocking on that door. We just need 23 more people to go down there, hit that subscribe button today. So if you guys are brand new here or haven't hit that subscribe button just yet, help me out. Make me look at my for my bosses here at Chat Sports and hit that subscribe button today. All right, so the biggest free agent target out there for the Minnesota Vikings, by far, in my opinion, is Asante Samuel Jr. Now, this even dates back to free agency, where we were getting reports that the Vikings were heavily interested in Asante Samuel, but he was dealing with a spinal injury, but he got cleared by doctors, so he is ready to go, and he is already starting to take some visits. And actually, two NFC North teams are scheduled to have visits with Asante Samuel Jr., is being reported by Jordan Schultz, the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings, and then also the Carolina Panthers, who actually get the first visit with Asante. So, listen, obviously the Vikings have a need at that cornerback position. Byron Murphy, Isaiah Rodgers, they have played subpar football, I will say, so far this year. Isaiah Rodgers, he was obviously fantastic in that Bengals game. But besides that, he has definitely struggled in coverage a good amount. And, besides those two guys like Jeff Okudah, do you even feel comfortable putting him out there on the football field again this season? Personally, I do not. And then you elevated Fabian Morrow this past week. I thought he had a decent showing, but still, point remains. Besides Byron Murphy and Isaiah Rodgers, this cornerback room is probably the thinnest in the entire NFL. And Asante Samuel, the one negative about him, and us Vikings fans, we've been growing crazy with our corners not being able to tackle so far this season. Asante Samuel is a poor tackler, but he is pretty damn good in coverage, especially if he is cleared medically. I would have a lot of interest here, so this could be something that could happen at any time. We'll keep you guys posted with this, but pretty big time news here. The Vikings are having a visit with Asante Samuel. But let's talk about some other cornerback targets here. And how about a little Duke Shelley, a little reunion with the Minnesota Vikings? That Linsanity run that Duke Shelley had back in the 2022 season was special. I mean, he had one of the best plays of the Vikings season that year, that pass breakup he had in Buffalo in that crazy game on Dawson Knox to pretty much seal it. But I will say there's a big reason why the Vikings did not bring him back in 2023. That was because Brian Flores took over as defensive coordinator, and Duke Shelley is just a horrible scheme fit. Like, it is nothing, to do with him, nothing to do with Flores, just a combination of those two, and that archetype of corner being like a 5'8", 5'9" corner who doesn't really tackle too well. He's primarily playing on the outside. It's just not a good scheme fit with Brian Flores, so I really would not have, too much interest there. But talk about a guy that's a perfect scheme fit with Flo. That's veteran cornerback Stephon Gilmore, still out there. I do have my questions, though, if Gilmore still wants to play football. He hasn't officially announced his retirement, so maybe he does have some interest, coming back to the National Football League. And, listen, even though Gilmore was, pretty poor the second half of last season, I would still at least make the call because the Vikings just need depth at their cornerback room. And Gilmore, he understands the scheme. I feel like he could come in here. Obviously he can't guard some of the elite wide receivers in the NFL like he used to, but still like those wide receiver twos, the wide receiver threes, he is just such an intelligent corner, especially when he's running trail coverage, which the Vikings run trail coverage at the cornerback position more than almost any team in the NFL. So he can still execute that game plan. But he is obviously a lot older. But again, you're not asking him to go play 17 games. Like, if you would sign him this week, you would just say, hey, Gilmore, 10 games, hopefully a playoff game. Go play some good football for this team. So I think the Vikings should at least give him a call. But there are some other guys out there. You got a guy like Emmanuel Moseley, Cameron Sutton, who's with the Steelers and Lions in the past. And then how about two reunions here? Cameron Dantzler and Andrew Booth Jr. Really wouldn't have interest in any of these guys. But again, this just could be, the Vikings trying to get bodies in that room. Because like I've been saying, it is an incredibly thin cornerback room. So if I had to pick any corner, I'm picking Asante Samuel. I think this move is, I don't want to say it's likely going to happen, but it's definitely on the table. I mean, he's taking a visit with the Vikings, so he would have some interest there. And if he had to pick Vikings, Packers, or Panthers, I would assume the Vikings and Panthers would clear Carolina just because he probably wants to go play in some high leverage games. And the Vikings and Packers, like, even though the Vikings aren't guaranteed to make it the playoffs, like I think the Packers are, they're still going to be playing in a lot of big time football games for the rest of the season. So I think Asante would have some interest in Minnesota. And I think the Vikings front office should 100% have interest in Asante Samuel. But you guys let me know. Name a cornerback the Vikings should sign. Now, coming up here in just a second, I do want to dive into some other free agent targets, and one specifically Probably the most versatile player besides Andrew Van Ginkel in the National Football League. So we'll talk about him here in a second. But before we do so, I've got to tell you guys about today's presenting sponsor. That is Factor Meals. Now, if you guys head over to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off and plug in promo code VikingsChat50 off, we'll hook you guys up with 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Now, the fall season always feels like a reset. Between back to school, busy routines, and shorter days, finding time to cook can be tough. That's why I love Factor. Their chef-prepared, dietitian-approved meals make it easy to stay on track and enjoy something comforting and delicious, no matter how hectic the season gets. And I love Factor because they got more variety and more meals. Choose from a wider selection of weekly meal options, including premium seafood choices like salmon and shrimp, at no extra cost. They also do a great job in terms of supporting your wellness goals. Enjoy even more GLP-1 friendly meals and new Mediterranean diet options packed with protein and good for you facts. So if you guys could head to factormeals.com/VikingsChat50 off, plug in that promo code VikingsChat50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 whole year. That's code VikingsChat50 off at factormeals.com for 50% off your first box plus free breakfast for 1 year. Get delicious, ready-to-eat meals delivered with Factor. Now, this offer is only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscription purchase. All right, we're going to look at the safety room here because besides corner, I think safety would probably be the second biggest position group of need for the Minnesota Vikings. And we're going to talk about a former All-Pro guy here. How about a little Justin Simmons? Now, I'm still shocked Justin Simmons is not signed with the team just yet. And I'll tell you what, if you're Justin Simmons, like I guarantee this, you would absolutely love to play with Brian Flores. A versatile safety, can hop down, play in the box, and, safeties always excel under Flores. Like, I know I'm not the biggest fan of PFF, but they do a pretty good job in terms of grading out secondary players, and all safeties for the Vikings, they always grade out well. Like, it was this year, the year before, and the year prior. Like, safeties just always have good years under Brian Flores. So for a guy, you want to play in some high-leverage games, playing a very unique defensive scheme that's very fun to play in, like, that's Brian Flores' defense. So Justin Simmons, any of his friends, family watching today's show, go sign with the Minnesota Vikings. You could have a great year as we try to close out this season. But let's talk about another reunion here. How about a former Super Bowl champion, former first-round pick, Lewis Cine? Now, listen, I have no interest in bringing Lewis Cine into the Minnesota Vikings team, but this would be absolutely hysterical. I mean, this video I would make if we got a notification, oh, my God, the Vikings are signing Lewis Cine. It would just be hilarious. But I would have no interest there. Lewis Cine was by far Kwesi's worst draft pick in his first ever draft. He traded off the 12th spot, moved down to pick number 32, selected Lewis Cine. Didn't end up working out. Just doesn't really have too good of instincts at the NFL level. Just got beat over the top too much. We always viewed him as like that box safety who could be a thumper in the run game, but he didn't really live up to that either. So I would have no interest in Lewis Cine. And then another guy out there, Tayshaun Gibson, former Chicago Bear, actually. He was pretty good with the Bears when he was back in his prime, but again, an older player. Wouldn't really have too much interest in Gibson as well. I'd still rather just roll out with a guy like, Theo Jackson, Josh Metellus, and these other cats in the Vikings safety room. But if I am going to pick two guys, give me Asante Samuel and give me Justin Simmons. But there are some other big-name free agent targets out there. And, one being Isaiah Simmons. I'll give you guys my thoughts on Simmons here in just a second. But you also have former Viking from last year who stepped in, played great football. I still remember that one sweet interception he had in Green Bay last season, Kamu Grugier-Hill. He's just a solid player. I'm honestly shocked the team hasn't picked him up yet. But then you got a guy like Christian Wilkins. I've gotten some comments about that. I would just rather not. Wilkins is about to be healthy, so I understand he's a very talented player. But again, do you really want to bring that nonsense and that noise around him into your locker room? I'm going to lean on the side of caution here and say no. We also got Dante Foreman, solid running back, bruising back, good around the goal line, and same with Jamal Williams, good goal line back. So if the Vikings, maybe if Aaron Jones gets banged up again, maybe they try to hit up Foreman or hit up Jamal Williams as a possible replacement for him. But out of all five of these guys, the really only one I would have some interest in is Isaiah Simmons. Now, Isaiah Simmons has not worked out in the NFL. He's bounced around, started with Arizona, went to the New York Giants. When he was with the Green Bay Packers early on this season. He's not that good of a football player, but he's a freak athlete, extremely versatile, and he could be like a little fun project for Brian Flores, where it's like, uses him on specific packages, gives him a very condensed role, uses him kind of as like a one-trick pony. I think he would maybe have some value there, but again, he's just not that good of a football player right now. And especially with the Vikings running a very complex scheme and a very unique scheme, it would probably take some time for Simmons to get caught up to speed with that. But again, if you condense his role, tell them to just do one thing on any given play, maybe Flores would have some interest in bringing Isaiah Simmons in. But you guys let me know. Should the Vikings sign another player? Give me a Y for yes. Give me an N for no. You guys let me know your thoughts, and we'll get on out of here. As always, let's go Vikes.